Today I'm going to try and restore this 1966 Ludwig Pioneer snare drum. This snare drum was purchased for me for Christmas last year as a match to my 1966 Blue Oyster kit. This drum sat in a window somewhere in the world, I'm not sure where, but it faded on one side of it, and the finish is better as we go around. So I'm going to see what I can do to get some of this yellowed finish out of here. Okay, we're going to start by taking the heads off, and that'll just take a minute here. And we'll do our best to always get Ludwig parts. I always get Ludwig parts, whether they're vintage or just new. At least they're Ludwig. There's the rims, bottom head is off. This drum is in pretty good shape. Bearing edges are very nice. No sign of previous repairs. It's painted white inside, so it's the real thing. I'm curious to see how good this chrome will polish up. I have a feeling that it's not coming back. The Ludwig parts are off. The only thing still on there and in good shape is the badge, and we'll be very, very, very careful not to mess that up. Well, you can see the discoloration. This is the original Blue Oyster. It's beautiful. And unfortunately, it was left in a window. Started looking at these lug casings, and someone took the time to wrap the spring on every one of them. And you do that to, if they're noisy, sometimes these things will rattle. So, you know, guys will wrap the spring in there, and I'll just leave it like that because it's already done. First thing I'm going to use to clean the shell is a magic eraser sponge. The magic eraser. These sponges are miracle sponges. I've rinsed this out. It's damp, and I'm just going to wipe the entire shell to get whatever surface grime is on the shell, and I'll even wipe the inside of the shell. These old drums are pretty resilient. Recently, my basement flooded, and my 66 Ludwig Oyster kit was in the basement. They took on water, and I got lucky. They were unscathed. That's all we'll do there. Take a dry cloth, just wipe the damp off of it. There's going to be a couple things I'm going to try. This is the worst part of this shell. This, let's say that quarter of the shell. Call me crazy, but I am going to try Repel with 40% DEET. I just cleaned my plastic headlights on my truck, and this worked wonders. Cleaned them perfectly. So this is either going to work and I'll be a hero, or it will screw this up and I'll be an idiot. But hey, I'm willing to try it. Let's see if it works. I'm doing it right by that case, the rim, so I can see if it's actually lifting any of that yellow up. And you know what? I think it has taken a layer of that yellow off of there. It did. I'm going to wipe that off so it doesn't keep eating into... Wow. Hey. Wait a minute now. I think we're on to something. I feel the plastic getting gummy. It's probably not good. Certainly dulls the finish. Well, that wasn't the result I was hoping for. You know what? It did take a little bit off, though. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but definitely softened up that finish. So the other product I'll use is rubbing compound. And if this doesn't work, we'll use wet sandpaper. I chose this Meguiar's Ultimate Compound over the 3M product, which I'm used to using. I don't know why I chose it, just because of the fancy label. We've got a damp applicator sponge and some Meguiar's rubbing compound. Well, the Repel product, this stuff, I don't recommend you putting this on your drums. It was just a crazy idea to try. It softened up the finish, and it's still kind of soft. So we'll get that all out of there though. The rubbing compound brought it back a little bit, and it's shinier than over here. So what we'll try next is some wet sandpaper. So, yeah. Okay, I'm back with some 400 grit wet sandpaper. I was hoping I had maybe 800 or even 1,000. I probably do, but I can't find it, and I don't feel like stopping all this and going to the store. But we're going to gently start. I think this is going to be a labor of love. I've been sanding on this side of the drum, and this is where the lug casing was. This is how the finish was in its heyday. This is what it looks like now. So I've sanded on this side, so there is a difference. It is coming up. So I think we're making progress. Now this is 180. This is very aggressive, but you know what? All we can do is just keep sanding. And I sanded it with 180 and then with 400 wet sandpaper. And you can see, I think, the difference between this and this. So real quick, I'm gonna put this buffer on it and see. I'll have my cameraman hold this for me. All right, so what did we do? All right, so I think we made progress. I still see I see scratch marks in this, but I've got 180 and 400 grit, and I need to get like an 800 grit and sand it, and then buff it. But we're making progress. We'll take our time around that badge, as it's in good shape. It's never been removed, and we don't want to mess it up. Okay, we're back. I went ahead and I wet sanded the whole drum with 180 and then 400 grit. The worst side of it was this side where the badge was. I went ahead and tried to tape that off so I don't mess it up. I sanded and sanded here, but it's real thin right in here, and I got a little nervous to continue to work on that. But so the rest of the drum was pretty good. So all right, so the final cleaning of this drum, I'm going to use, this is what I use, FW1 Wash and Wax. This is a wax made, it's a cleaning wax made for cars, but I've been using this on my drums for a long time with great results. I have a 1985 set of Yamaha Recording Customs that are my pride and joy, and I clean it with this, and it's amazing. And we'll call it done. Then we got to do the hardware. Alrighty. Even the bad side is a lot better than it was. I can actually see the oyster in there. What do you think? All right, I'll clean the hardware up and we'll come back and see what it looks like. All right. I cleaned all the hardware, and it didn't didn't clean up as well as I had hoped. But I used a fine, well, this is a medium steel wool. I used steel wool and a little rubbing compound, and then I cleaned them with the FW1 wax that I use. You know, like I said, this is a Pioneer snare drum, and I don't normally buy, like, this is my first Pioneer drum, and I have to say, I think, you know, part of the budget of these drums are maybe cheap chrome or cheaper hardware, because it just doesn't come up. It looks like it was very poorly chromed from the factory, but it's clean, it feels good. I polished it. The rims are nice and round. The lugs are all in good shape. They just don't shine like a quality Ludwig item. But anyway, they're clean. The next thing we'll do is reassemble the drum with some new heads and see what it sounds like. All right, we're gonna put the P83 strainer on. That's the Ludwig P83 strainer. Get the head seated on there. Good. I like the black dot because it gives the snare drum a little more focus. When I replaced the old one, I don't even know what brand this was. This might be Ludwig for all I know. I'll keep it, but it's got a pretty good twist in it, and it's kind of, I usually like the standard width snare wires. So the difference between a Pioneer snare drum, a Ludwig Pioneer, and a Ludwig Jazz Festival drum are the number of lugs. So the Pioneer has 6 lugs. The Jazz Festival drum has 8. And I wanted to point out, this drum, I haven't cleaned this drum, and look how shiny it is, right? The chrome is very shiny. And I cleaned this drum. Now this might be part of the Pioneer, where you save money on a Pioneer drum. This is all clean. I've cleaned this. I've put rubbing compound and steel wool. It just wasn't as chromed as good as the Jazz Festival drum. I think that's where Ludwig saved a little money. All right, we've assembled the drum, put the new heads on, tuned it up a little bit. Sounds pretty good. Let's see what the muffler does with it. I'm going to adjust that muffler a little bit. It's good. Real quick, I've got a Ludwig Superphonic sitting here, so we can hear the difference between a Ludwig Pioneer wood drum and a Superphonic. Alright, so the 1966 Ludwig Pioneer snare drum polishing project is done. This is a Blue Oyster wrapped snare drum. It was faded very bad on this side of the drum, and let's talk about the process I used to refinish the drum. It came out really nice. And for reference, here's a tom. This is a 1966 tom. I'm very lucky that I have this whole kit. This is I have a 12, 13, 16, 22 by 14 bass drum. So that's why I bought this snare drum, was to match the kit. So, but you can see the color difference. This kit is just about mint. All right, let's talk about what we did. First thing I did was to disassemble the drum. Took it all apart, and we used a magic eraser. This cleans pretty much anything, and is fairly, it's non-abrasive, and it cleans a lot of different things. So we wet the sponge and I wiped the whole drum down. That was the first thing I used. Then, for an experiment, I used Repel. It took off some of the yellowing, but it left the finish a little gummy. So I don't recommend this. It was just an experiment. All right, so what I decided to do was I started with 180 grit wet sandpaper, and I sanded the whole drum out like that. And then I went to a 400 grit, and then to a 600 grit, then 800 grit, then 1500 grit wet sandpaper. I wet sanded the whole drum. Then I took my orbital buffer and I used this Meguiar's Ultimate Compound and buffed the shell out. And it took all the micro fine scratches out. And I did that twice. And then the last thing I used, and this is what I clean all my drums with, is this FW1 wash and wax polish. So all the products I use, I'll put a link in the description, so go check that out. And Amazon has all these things that I've used. But the FW1 is a great cleaner and wax, and it's safe for all your drum finishes that I've found. I have 6 different drum sets, all of varying finishes, and this works great, and I've been using this for a while. So, great product. Microfiber cloths I bought, soft applicator. I used to apply this by hand first, and then I buffed it out with the machine. So, there it is.